It is going to be fascinating once we get onto that climb. It's also narrow, which I think is crucial because being in position is going to be critical. I'm sure Jumbo-Visma know that. They will want to get to the base of the final climb now, and I suspect it's going to be all about that, bringing whoever they are working for to the base of that final climb and dispatching them out of trouble, because there are places where, from what I can tell, it's actually slightly narrower than 3 metres, which is going to make moving up tricky with the number of riders we have going into the base of it. My suspicion is by the time we get to the top, a lot of these riders we're seeing right now will not be anywhere near our shots, but let's see who is tucked in there saving energy and waiting for this one, because there's a fair few unknowns in here that might be quite tasty over a stout 4K climb up to the top there of the Monte Trega.
Well, I tell you what, in terms of who's going to ride for the GC, it's not going to be Rowan Dennis, because Dennis is leading in to the bottom of the climb here. Dennis on the front there. Attila Valter sat in third wheel, but liking that second wheel is Jonas Vingegaard. So Vingegaard tucked into the slipstream of Rowan Dennis, who is more than capable of taking things up now all the way to the bottom. So in about 4K, they'll hit the 5K to go board, and then there's a long straight road, and they swing left off the main road onto the climb. And there's a series of quite steep curves with about 3K to go. There's a real tight hairpin. And then in the last couple of kilometres, there are several very, very tight hairpins, including the one at the Flamme Rouge. And they won't get sight of the finish line until only about 100 metres to go. Even less than that, there's a real sharp left-hander with about 75, 100 metres to go. So it's quite a complicated technical rise to the line.
We are inside the final 10K of this Gran Camino, the second edition of this race, which actually has a history that goes back 89 years. My name's Jez Cox. I'm alongside Matt Stevens, and we're driving towards the base of a climb which is yet to be used in this race at this level, the Monte Trega, dead-end road up at the top of one of the most important historical monuments in Galicia, in northern Spain, where we are right now. The opening stage yesterday was nullified after extremely heavy snow, and the riders stopped with about 16K to go. It's left us with this fascinating situation today where everything is all to play for on this final climb. The breakaway we originally had of 7 riders is back in, and the chase has been led by Jumbo-Visma since those 7 departed. Jumbo-Visma remain at the front. The current Tour de France champion, Jonas Vingegaard, is tucked in second wheel, and just behind him, Attila Valter, the Hungarian national road race champion. Matt, I could imagine Attila Valter going into the base, we were talking about it earlier, of the Puy de Dôme with Jonas Vingegaard on his wheel, ready to dispatch him. Could today be a day where they prepay, they put some money in the bank of Attila Valter by making him their race leader?
I don't know. I think it would just depend on how good his legs are. If he can stay with Jonas Vingegaard, but it's just the positioning interests me. I think Jonas Vingegaard would want to try and win this one, but the order that they're lining up in potentially suggests, and we don't need to read too much into it, but traditionally the rider who's going to go for the stage, the protected rider, will sit a couple of wheels back. But Jonas Vingegaard has decided to sit on the wheel of Rowan Dennis. So we shall see, but we know the capabilities, the capacity that Attila Valter has. He is a very, very good climber. So we'll wait and see. Steven Kruijswijk has dropped back. His work for the day is done, but we're approaching the foot of the climb very, very quickly. But I noticed a couple of riders from Trinity Racing are moving up as well. They're just moving up onto the inside. As you said, the foot of the climb, they swing off the main road, and it does narrow. So, positioning will be critical. You certainly, and with that narrowing, that funneling, any riders sort of from 10th to 15th back and a little bit more than that will actually have to dab the brakes a little bit. And immediately, when they hit the steep slopes, the last thing you want to do is have to brake. So that's why we're seeing this dual arrowhead. And Trinity a little bit on the right-hand side there. And on the left now, for the first time today, the mass ranks of Cofidis, who have, I think, the team with the deepest of options.
Absolutely. Jonas Aguirre is at the back of that line as well. So if we go by what you were talking about, Matt, that normal preconception that your protected rider is right at the back of the string, or at least second from last, with someone sweeping on their wheel, Cofidis appear to have everyone there. Jonas Aguirre was right at the back of that group. Simon Geschke just in front of him as well. They have so much climbing firepower and punchy fast finishing in that team for a stage just like this. We are as if you were leading into a final flat sprint, but what we're really leading into is to the base of the Monte Trega, I should say. I've confused my R's and E's there.
There is
Cofidis in the middle.
Yeah, there is a climb called the Monte Trega as well, which I found out. But yeah, Movistar moving up on the left as well, though, looking after Guerrero, and another option for them, Ivan Sosa. But they've got some very capable climbers in Antonio Pedrero as well. He's won some big races in the past. This is that long straight road that I'm talking about before they swing left, and they end up at the top of that big peak that you can see on the left-hand side of your screen.
Don't forget Ivan Sosa as well. He finished this race in 5th place last year, just behind Ruben Fernandez. Both of them are here. Ivan Sosa, normally the Colombian, more one for the longer climbs. He's a wonderfully gifted climber, the former Ineos man who's at Movistar. He will be in that lineup as well too, and a potential for an early move to hit out and try and get into a rhythm on that climb. I think it might be tricky though, because I've got a feeling those cobbles, no matter how bad they are going to really break up the rhythm with 600 metres to go.
Yeah, Human Powered Health also on the right-hand side there. And on the left, a first glimpse today of the full lineup of Q36.5 Pro Cycling. Now, they've got some good climbers amongst their number. We've already name-checked them, Gianluca Brambilla and Mark Donovan of Great Britain. There they are on the right. Just on the front now, it is Joey Roscoff, the former TT champion of the US. He's the sort of rider you want on the front at these times of the day. And at the moment, it's a bit of a drag strip between Charles-Etienne Chrétien, the Canadian for Human Powered Health, and the double world TT champion Rowan Dennis, who's just outgunned him there. Just complete the amount of time that Dennis has spent on the front. He is so strong, and glued to his back wheel still is Jonas Vingegaard. It won't be long before we hit the bottom of the climb.
Gianluca Brambilla is sitting at the back of those silvery jerseys of Q36.5 Pro Cycling. He is there. He's the smaller, the shorter of those Q36.5 Pro Cycling riders. In the middle is Jesus Herrada with the former Spanish champion stripes on his sleeve, riding for Cofidis. He slots back in about 4th or 5th wheel. Maybe it is for him. On paper, he's their fastest uphill finisher as well. He just pushes on the back there of one of the Trinity riders to get back onto his train. Jesus Herrada is trying to get onto the back of those 3 Cofidis riders. That makes me suspicious that he is the rider they're working for today, Herrada.
Yeah, I think you're right. And he's had great form already, 7th overall in the Tour of Oman, as well as taking out stage 2. So he is on great form. So Cofidis looking good. And we've seen now that Rowan Dennis has dropped away. His job is done. Jonas Vingegaard is now on the wheel. I think it is of Attila Valter. Lovely views here. So just a completely different day than we had yesterday. Crisp, chilly day, but a beautiful one nonetheless.
Yeah, and a glass still Atlantic Ocean. Look at that. Hardly any waves hammering in here at all. Really still, really calm. Totally unlike what's about to happen, because this is the final climb of the day, the Monte Trega. We're onto it already. Cofidis lead onto it. It's the first time of the day where we're struggling to see yellow jerseys. We're looking for Jumbo-Visma. One rider on the outside, but they seem to, and I should say, of course, that the Hungarian champion is still there as well. Attila Valter, he's looking good. I think we might have lost...
It looked like it was actually Johannes Stalain Mittet on the right-hand side. The young rider for the Continental team is taking it up on the front. Attila Valter, a couple of... Izagirre is on the wheel of this man now. This is where the road starts to kick up. And this is a ferocious pace that's been set by Izagirre here.
Oh, he looks really good, doesn't he? Stamping on the pedals. Very early on, though. This is a big hit out very early on. So I wonder whether it is for him or whether he's doing this for a teammate. This could still be all about trying to set up Jesus Herrada.
Yeah, so I think Herrada's a little... I think this is Jose Herrada. I think you can just see Izagirre a little bit further back there. Very similar styles on a bike, but I think it's Jose Herrada on the front at the moment. Jesus Herrada is, I think, their protected rider, but as you can see, they have got options, and already on the lower slopes, there's still over 3Ks to go. This field is shedding riders very quickly.
Yeah, the back door is very much open, and they've been dripping off since we took that right-hand turn onto the road. You're right, this is Johannes Stone Mittet, another powerful Norwegian rider plying his trade in the World Tour and riding, stepping up, as Matt said, from the Continental Under-23 team to ride for the big boys in amongst the Jumbo-Visma seniors, and giving it absolutely everything here with 3K to go. And look at Jonas Vingegaard on his wheel. Vingegaard looks so calm.
He looks serene, doesn't he? I mean, this is a classy rider. The rider on the front now, 21 years of age, from Lillehammer in Norway, a former winner of the Ronde Lizard, and is signed up for 2024 through 2026. Another burgeoning talent, and at the moment he's making a lot of riders hurt here. Has a little look round. He will see the Tour de France champion on his wheel. Still a long way to go, 2.8 kilometres to go. We have about 40 riders left, and most riders here at the back struggling to stay in contention. Great bit of pace setting by this youngster.
We mentioned that Jonas Vingegaard started so well at the Fondrone Classic last year at the beginning of his season by getting the win there. And even in that race, I remember saying how comfortable he looked throughout. He has a wonderful, easy style. And not just that, not just about his cycling and his form, he just seems to be a very calm, locked-in man anyway, in general. And he's exhibiting that right now on these slopes of our final climb, the Monte Trega. Wow. Beautiful views behind them. Stone Mittet giving it absolutely everything he can. He's biting on that tongue as best he can, Philippe Gilbert style almost, and his team leader just sits there tapping away, Matt, all the time.
Yeah, you do wonder how much longer. He looks to be right. He is in the red zone here. This is real commitment. This is real power. But look, like you say, how serene the man on his wheel is. Attila Valter is looking very good. Look at this big acceleration by Vingegaard on the left-hand side. Wow, look at this.
Massive. The Tour de France champion goes. Who's got anything left? It's one of the Cofidis riders trying to stamp across. But even now, even at full pelt, Jonas Vingegaard looks totally in control. He's looking over his shoulder to see his damage. Who can come with him?
Well, 2.3.
Looking back.
Did you see that? Izagirre looked and thought, no way can I even go with that. That was a ridiculous turn of speed from the Tour de France champion. Beautifully set up by the man from Norway, Johannes Stone Mittet. What can this man do now? And visibly, he's just moving quicker. There was nothing they could do about it. There wasn't even. They just looked and they didn't even try. Actually, Izagirre just swung over and said, just no way I can actually respond to that violent acceleration. This man is absolutely flying.
2K to go for Jonas Vingegaard. Just 1 week ago, of course, we were watching his big Tour de France rival Tadej Pogacar romping away from people and taking everything in his stride in the Ruta del Sol. Well, I wondered at the time what kind of message that might send to Jonas Vingegaard and how he was feeling about things. Well, I think we're getting our answer right now. He's coming into this season in very fine form indeed, the defending champion of the Tour de France, and starting perhaps as he means to go on the attack as well. He indicated that yesterday by taking the opening bonus seconds of the stage, and today he's made an attack from a very illustrious leading group, and they have no answer to it right now.
No, they don't. They've settled into a rhythm now, though. They couldn't do anything about the stinging attack. The way he just cut that apex, just look at the speed. The average gradient of this climb, a reminder, 7.5%. He's still on the big ring, absolutely flying up here. 16 seconds is the gap. Beautiful shot there, and he's romping. It is almost if, well, anything that Tadej Pogacar can do, I can do better. This generation of riders that we have, we know that Vingegaard is a different style of rider. We know he's not, he just is himself, but that was a stinging acceleration of the likes that we only see from the great champions. The fact there was zero response at all, as if just we can't do anything about it. I mean, look at the relatively laboured riding here of the riders behind, and this is a classy group of riders. They just have nothing that they can do to offer up in defence of that attack.
That looks like Jefferson Cepeda of Caja Rural Seguros just trying to limit his losses. There's a remarkable difference in form between our leader here, Jonas Vingegaard, and them, because they look like they're really labouring and pressing on the pedals. Vingegaard is obviously working incredibly hard, but he has this wonderful, relaxed and yet incredibly powerful style. Long-limbed and very efficient to look at on the bike. He's still looking back though, Matt.
He's making sure. He's taken another 3 seconds though. He's just making sure. Clearly, if they were starting to close, you'd like to think that he might have a little bit under the hood, but this is the sort of effort that he's pretty much maxed out. He'll be right on the red line here as we see the group further split behind. This is a great rider. It's one of the riders from Burgos Biachi who's going clear. Not too sure who this one is, but he's out of the saddle and he's opened up a bit of a gap on the group behind. So good riding by this rider, and he's moved clear, but look at the sprocket that he's on there, on an enormous gear compared to everybody else. And you talk about the form he's in, Jez, he's clearly in good form, but I think as well it's about ability. It's about, there's form, the current form, but there's the ability, the capacity of these riders. And look at the state that everybody was in under the impetus and the pace being set by Stone Mittet. And yet Vingegaard was just tranquil on his wheel, and then he hit out. It's just, form clearly is there. It won't be his Tour de France form, but it's just the capacity that he has to go hard off the pace that's been set behind, in front.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be said, contrasting him with Tadej Pogacar last week, that was a deliberate attack by Jonas Vingegaard and his team. Pogacar last week was talking about how actually others were attacking him, and he had no choice but to cover and then go over the top of them and what have you, and yet they just weren't strong enough to go with him. This is totally different. This is Jonas Vingegaard taking the race, and his team taking the race totally to themselves. They've chased all day, they've closed the gap to the breakaway, they've gone over the top of the breakaway, and they've led him into this final climb. This is a very decisive and deliberate move, and here come the cobbles as they turn off the main road. So this is going to be quite rough. Let's have a look at how bad they are.
Yeah, they're pretty bumpy, aren't they? Very narrow, grass growing in between. The rider that's accelerated off the front of the next group, Jez, is Victor Langelotti of Monaco, has had a 6th place on the stage of the Tour of Oman, so he's looking good, but this is very steep and clearly very, very bumpy indeed.
There we go, the Burgos Pleache rider, Victor Langelotti, one of very few Monegasque riders in the peloton, certainly at the level at which he's racing at. But Jonas Vingegaard, with the number 1-1 on his back, is looking like he's going to be exactly that today. By the time they get to the top, he's going to round that last corner. That's the final shot. He should be off the cobbles. And I tell you what, they were pretty nasty cobbles too, and they still are, and they will be for the riders who are coming in for many minutes to come just yet, because there are riders well down on this. The one who isn't, though, is Jonas Vingegaard, who didn't make that look easy, because that was particularly tough. But his attack today has been utterly devastating. The defending Tour de France champion, he'll have looked at Tadej Pogacar last week. You couldn't have missed it. He won 3 stages and the overall of the Ruta del Sol and made it look very easy. He might have looked at that and said, you know what, anything you can do, I might not be able to do it better, but I can do it just as well. And he's romped away to win today. Great performance by his team, Jumbo-Visma, and you can tell Jonas Vingegaard is in form. Final bend for him, and he'll be into the last, I think, 200 metres now, if my estimation is correct, as he comes around that corner. The Dane, Jonas Vingegaard, is going to win the 2nd stage, but effectively the opening stage of Gran Camino. And what a dominant final ride up. What a great climb as well, up Monte Trega. And Guerrero it is. It's going to be Guerrero who comes to the line second by the looks of it. Ruben Guerrero, we've seen nothing of in the final stage of this, with the number 1 on his back as the defending champion of Alejandro Valverde's former team, of course. Guerrero looking really good come the finish, but none of them had any answer to Jonas Vingegaard.
Now Izagirre just crossed the line there as well. Langelotti holding on for a place inside the top 10. Fortunato also there. And also one of the riders from Trinity, maybe just outside at the top 10. We'll get confirmation who that was, but what an emphatic performance that was. Dominant, one attack, it was just one singular acceleration that took him clear, and not one rider could offer up anything in response at all. Okay, it's early in the year, we're only still in February, well, that certainly does augur well for a fantastic rest of the year, but Jonas Vingegaard has set down a real marker there. That was a stellar, exciting performance.
Absolutely. He has won Tour de France to his name, Matt, of course. I've been contrasting him a bit with Tadej Pogacar, because this is the big battle we're expecting to see in July this summer. Tadej Pogacar got his 50th win last week at the Ruta del Sol, which is in some contrast, because don't forget, Jonas Vingegaard is quite a bit older than Tadej Pogacar at the age of 26. That today is his 13th win. The remarkable thing is that over the course of the last year, just the last 12 months, a couple of those, well, 3 of those wins have come in the Tour de France. 2 of them stages, 1 of them the overall. It is a remarkable recent, really big surge of performance in his career. If I think back to, I first came across him, Matt, I think in late 2019, maybe maybe it would have been 2020, covering the Tour of Denmark. He was riding for, would it have been Collerquick, I think, if I remember. Yes, it was Collerquick.
Yeah, Collerquick in 2018.
Yeah, 2018 it was. And he got into a couple of breakaways, and I remember thinking, this guy is just that. He had something. He looked wonderful on the bike for a start. Nothing about his form has changed at all. But the way he set about the race as well was quite impressive. He didn't win it, but he was right up there amongst the best riders. And I remember thinking, someone to watch out for in the future. And I wouldn't necessarily have expected him to go on to win the Tour de France, but he is looking...
It's looking good.
Very good, isn't he? Really good.
Very, very good. It's not a bad way to open your campaign, is it? With a win, and perfectly set up by his team as well. And they clearly felt that one. He went very, very deep. There's those glances over his shoulder. There's always that little bit of uncertainty earlier in the air. They got a little bit too early. But with every pedal stroke, he was opening up the gap. And I think in the end, he just had over 20 seconds, didn't he? But a good ride, a late surge there by Ruben Guerra, who's... that was an interesting transfer from Guerra over from EF to Movistar, but he's had a great start to the year, but certainly rode a slightly more measured effort. We didn't see him on the lower slopes in any of those groups, but paced his effort very, very well. But that was a dominant performance, and what a wonderful climb as well. A little bit of spice added to it with those very, very big cobblestones on the run into the line, and it certainly slowed the riders down a little bit. They were really quite bumpy, but look at that for a view. A spectacular finish, and I'm glad we've got this race properly underway after an abortive attempt yesterday, but good to see that the race is fully underway. 2 exciting stages to come.
Yeah, that is looking back inland up the Minho River, away from the southern edge of Santa Trega. As you said, Matt, great to see Ruben Guerra going well. We know he's going well anyway, because he just won the Saudi Tour a couple of weeks ago as well. But you're right, what you say about that move from EF Education Easy Post. We'll come back to that in a second, and we'll just confirm that top 10. It was Guerrero in second, Ionis Aguirre, the first of the Cofidis men, so they were thinking of him, we suspect, today. But Jesus Herrada was right there in fifth too, separated by Movistar's Antonio Pedreiro. Langelotti, as Matt cleanly picked out there as well, the Monegasque rider for Burgos Biace in sixth, Lorenzo Fortunato in seventh, and it was Lucas Necrocar, the British rider, in eighth. Great ride by him for the Trinity team. Ruben Fernandez in ninth, the Cofidis rider. Cofidis packing them right in that top 10. No surprise there, we were right to pick them out. And Attila Valter hung on for 10th too.